Shall we start?
Yes, Sheikh. Alaikum salam. I believe we can start. We have some people still joining, but I'll admit them as they request to join, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-ali al-azim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad. وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to start our fourth session, which is going to be inshallah parts 7 and 8 of this series of lectures on Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif in Islamic scholarship. According to the list of the topics that we shared with you, now we should start talking about Imam Mahdi in Islamic Hadith, Imam Mahdi in Sunni and Shia sources. Of course, many of our future discussions also are about Hadith, and therefore we are not going to discuss under this title, Imam Mahdi in the Hadith, everything that we have in the Hadith about Imam Mahdi. Basically, I want to introduce to you the significance of the idea of Al-Mahdi for Sunni and Shia narrators, scholars of Hadith, and have a general view about how much they have addressed this topic, especially in the early centuries. Because it's sad to believe, but unfortunately, we see there are people who want to say in the early centuries there was no such an idea as Al-Mahdi. Even the Shia were not clear, and later these things were added to the Shia theology, etc. This is very baseless. So what we do inshallah today, we will refer to some of the books which are compiled about this, and some of the general points about Hadith, Sunni Hadith, Shia Hadith, inshallah. And inshallah then, as I said, in future also we will use Hadith about different, for example, about occultation, about the time of appearance, etc. One of the things that we find, and I said this before and I hope it would be in our minds, is that actually the topic of Al-Mahdi is one of the topics that you find consensus among all schools of Islam on them. One of exceptional topics that you find all Muslims from different schools of Islam, they have consensus. They have considered hadith about Imam Mahdi to be authentic, or even many of them have said it is mutawatir. It's mutawatir, meaning that in every generation so many narrators have reported that leaves no chance for thinking that might be fabricated or might be mistaken, etc. For some other topics in Islam, we don't have this much of consensus, this much of agreement between Sunni and Shia. First, I would like to share with you what we have in the Shia sources, and I will inshallah share with you a list of the Shia sources in the first 5 centuries. If the host could enable screen sharing for me, please. Could you enable share screening for me? Okay, okay, thank you. I hope you can see my screen. So, Alhamdulillah, one of our brothers who has done a very good research on Imam Mahdi and is doing now his thesis also on this, has prepared this table, and this is only for the first 5 centuries of Islam, and only according to the book Mu'jam Ahadith al-Imam al-Mahdi, which we mentioned before. This is a book which is compiled under supervision of Sheikh Ali al-Qurani, and they have tried to bring hadith from Shia and Sunni in the under one title, one book. So this list is only prepared from that. It doesn't mean that this is inclusive and there is no other book in the first 5 centuries. But even this much is great. The first kitab of Sulaym ibn Qais al-Kufi, who died in 56 or 85 after Hijrah, in the 1st century, one of the earliest collections of hadith that we have. And you see, long before Imam Mahdi was born, Imam Mahdi was born in 255 after Hijrah. Long before he was born, the idea of Al-Mahdi was mentioned. The second book is Misbah al-Sharia, which is attributed to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. In Misbah al-Sharia, there's a discussion about Al-Mahdi. The third is Ra'b al-Sad' by Ahmad ibn Isa ibn Zayd ibn Ali. Died in 247. In Tafsir of Imam Askari alayhi salam, father of Imam Zaman, there is discussion about Al-Mahdi. Fadl ibn Shazan, in 4 books, in Al-Idha, in Ithbat al-Raj'ah, in Al-Ghayba, and in a book known as Kitab al-Fadl ibn Shazan, has reported hadith about Imam Mahdi. He died 260 after Hijrah, which is the year that Imam Askari also was martyred. Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Khalid al-Barghi in Al-Mahasin, which is a great book of hadith, also reports hadith about Imam Mahdi. He died in 274. Yaqubi, in his Tarikh, Ahmad ibn Abi Yaqub ibn Ja'far is famous as Tarikh Yaqubi, reports about Imam Mahdi. He died in 279. بصائر الدرجات في فضائل آل محمد صلى الله عليه وآله by Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Saffar al-Qummi, who died in 290, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Qurb al-Isnad by Himyari, Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Himyari, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Basair al-Darajat, again, but by another person, Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Qummi, who died in 301, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. In Tafsir of Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi, known as Tafsir al-Qummi, who died in 307, he was a teacher of Kulaini. There are hadith about Imam Mahdi. In Tafsir Furat al-Kufi by Furat ibn Ibrahim, who died in 307, we have hadith about Imam Mahdi. In Manaqib al-Imam Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam by Muhammad ibn Sulaiman al-Kufi, who died around 320, we have hadith about Imam Mahdi. In Tafsir al-Ayyashi, famous tafsir by Mahmud ibn Mas'ud ibn Ayyash, who died in 320, we have hadith. In Al-Imamatu wa Tabsirah by Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Babawayh al-Qummi, who died in 329, we have hadith about Imam Mahdi. In Al-Kafi by Sheikh Kulaini, who also died in 329, I mean, when Ghaybat al-Kubra started. So they lived during Ghaybat al-Sughra, so close. In Al-Hidayat al-Kubra, there is hadith about Imam Mahdi. He died in 334. In Isbat al-Wasiyya by Mas'udi, who died in 346, there are hadith. Al-Ghayba by Nu'man is famous as Ghaybat al-Nu'mani, who died 360, there is hadith. There are hadith about Imam Mahdi. Maqatil al-Talibiyin by Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani, who died in 365. The famous book Kamil al-Ziyarat, you must know this book because of the hadith it's about ziyarah of Imams, in particular Imam Hussein, by Abu al-Qasim Ja'far ibn Muhammad ibn Qulawayh al-Qummi, who died in 367. This book is very important also for ulama al-Rijal, because Ibn Qulawayh is a great scholar, and the introduction, he says he only quotes hadith which are sahih. So some ulama have taken the mention of a narrator in Kamil al-Ziyarat as a tawthiq, as a way of verification of reliability of those narrators. This is that much respected. Kitab al-Al by Ibn Khalawayh al-Hamdani, who died in 370, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. In a famous book, Tarikh Qum by Hassan ibn Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Qummi, there are hadith about Imam Mahdi. He died in 378. Sheikh al-Saduq, Sheikh al-Ta'ifa, a great Sheikh of Shia community, like Sheikh al-Tusi, who is a great scholar. Sheikh al-Saduq is a great scholar, and two of our Kutub Arba'ah are by Sheikh al-Tusi, Tahzib and Istibsar. One is by Sheikh al-Saduq, Man La Yahduru al-Faqih, and one is by Kafi. So these three have compiled Kutub Arba'ah, which are very important for the Shia. Sheikh al-Saduq, mashallah, has many books. In Musadaqatul Ikhwan, he has hadith about Imam Mahdi. In his Amali, in Ma'an al-Akhbar, in Mughna, in Man La Yahduru al-Faqih, in Sifat al-Shia, Ilal al-Shara'i, كمال الدين وتمام النعمة، عيون أخبار الرضا، خصال، ثواب الأعمال وعقاب الأعمال. In all these books he has a hadith about Imam Mahdi. He died in 381. If someone says that maybe there is something in Shia hadith that Sheikh Saduq was not aware, or something was not in the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, and Sheikh Saduq was deceived, some people put in his mind, this shows that they have not understood the history of the Shia and the significance of Sheikh Saduq, and how much access people like him and Sheikh Tusi and Kulayni had to our first 400 principles, Usul Arba'ah. Because before Kutub Arba'ah, we had 400 collections of hadith which were known as Asl. And these 400 were available to them. Today we have only some of them. These were compiled by the companions of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So Sheikh Saduq is not someone that you can say he could be not informed, or he could be misinformed about such a thing for which he quotes so many hadiths in so many books. Actually, Sheikh Saduq, according to some historical reports, is the one that was born through the dua of Imam Mahdi Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, when his father, who was a great scholar, Ali ibn Hussein ibn Babawayh al-Qummi, requested Imam to have, this blessing of having child. Al-Ghayat by Ja'far ibn Ahmad ibn Ali al-Qummi, who was in the 4th century. Al-Ja'fariyat or Al-Ash'athiyat by Abu Ali Muhammad ibn Ash'as al-Kufi from the 4th century. Tuhaf al-Uqul, famous book, Tuhaf al-Uqul and Al al-Rasul. This is, alhamdulillah, very much available. It has hadith from different Imams by Abu Muhammad Hassan ibn Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Shu'bah al-Bahrani, known as Ibn Shu'bah. Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari in Al-Mustarshad fi Imamat Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib. Also in Dalail al-Imamah. Also in Nawadir al-Mu'jizat fi Manaqib al-A'immat al-Hudat has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Al-Khazzaz al-Qummi in Kifayat al-Athar fi Nass ala al-A'immat al-Ithnay Ashar. The title means this is adequate in finding explicit designation of Imams by previous Imams and the Prophet in Hadith. So any Nas you want about any Imam of 12 Imams, he has collected. Of course there are more, but he has enough. مقتضب الأثر في النص على الأئمة الاثني عشر. Selection of hadith about, again, texts which indicate Imam of 12 Imams by Sheikh Ahmad ibn Ubaidullah ibn Ayyash al-Jawhari, who died 401. Al-Majazat al-Nabawiyya by Sharif al-Radhi, the same who compiled Nahj al-Balagha, 406. Manaqib Fatimat al-Zahra wa Wuldaha, merits of Lady Fatima and her progeny, by Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Jarir ibn Rustam al-Tabari, who died after 411. Sheikh Mufid, again one of our most outstanding scholars, a student of Sheikh Saduq. In many books he refers to the hadith of Imam Mahdi, and again he's very close to the time of Ghaybat al-Sughra. in Al-Irshad, which is history of Imams, in Al-Fusul al-Ashara fil Ghaiba, in Al-Ikhtisas, in Al-Amali, Al-Ifsah fi Imamat Amir al-Mu'mineen, Iddat Rasail, and in his Musannafat, also the collection of his work, we have hadith about Imam Mahdi. Al-Basti al-Zaydi in Tafsir Abul Qasim al-Basti has hadith about Imam Mahdi. He died 420. Ibn Shadhan, whose name is Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Ali ibn al-Hasan al-Qummi, known as Ibn Shadhan, who died in 420, has a book, Mi'atu Manqaba min Manaqib Amir al-Mu'mineen. He has reported 100 merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen, wal a'immat min wulde, and Imams from his progeny. 100 merits of them he has about Imam Mahdi. Taysir al-Matalib fi Amal al-Imam Abi Talib. This is by Sayyid Yahya ibn al-Husayn ibn Harun, reaches Imam Hassan and then Amir al-Mu'mineen himself. So about Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, he has hadith. In Al-Muhkam wal-Mutashabih, in Ash-Shafi fil Imamah, and Al-Zakhira fi Ilm al-Kalam, Sayyid Murtaza, brother of Sayyid al-Razi, they have hadith. Sayyid Murtaza was very, very influential. He was head of the Shia community at his time. He was a student of Sheikh Mufid. He died in 436. So he talks about and brings hadith of Imam Mahdi. Muhammad ibn Ali ibn al-Hasan ibn Abd al-Rahman al-Alabi al-Husayni al-Kufi, who died in 445, has a book, Fadl al-Kufa wa Fadl Ahlha, merits of Kufa and merits of its people. He has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Abu Salah al-Halabi in Taqrib al-Ma'arif, which is alhamdulillah recently published again, and it's available in many libraries, who died in 447, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Abu al-Fath al-Karachaki from the city of Karachi, in At-Tafdhil and Kanzul Fawaid, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. He died in 449. Shaykh al-Ta'ifa, Shaykh al-Tusi, that we just talked about, who has two of Kutub Arba'ah, Tahzib and Istibsar. He is great scholar. He died in 460. He has the first comprehensive tafsir of Quran, which is very detailed for the Shia. Maybe this is the first comprehensive detailed tafsir of Tafsir al-Tibyan. Has in this book hadith about Imam Mahdi. In his book of dua, which is known as Misbah al-Mutahajjid wa Salah al-Muta'abbid, which Sheikh Abbas Qummi in Mafatih many times cites from this, has about Imam Mahdi. Many du'as, many things about Imam Mahdi. In Talkhis al-Shafi, the same. In Tahdhib al-Ahkam, one of the Kutub Arba, about Imam Mahdi. In his Amali, has about Imam Mahdi. In Ikhtiyar al-Ma'rifat al-Rijal, which is one of the most important sources of Ilm al-Rijal, he has hadith about Imam Mahdi. In his Al-Ghaiba, which is exclusive to this topic, has many hadith about Imam Mahdi. Hakim al-Jashmi in Tanbih al-Ghafilin and Fada'il al-Talibi'in. This book is to awaken and to alarm those who are heedless about the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the family of Abu Talib. has hadith about Imam Mahdi. The author was Hakim Jashmi Muhsin ibn Muhammad ibn Karama, died 494. Abu Abdullah Ja'far ibn Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn al-Abbas al-Turisti, in his book Ar-Raddu ala al-Zaydiyya, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Sheikh Hussein ibn Abdul Wahhab in Uyun al-Mu'jizat has hadith about Imam Mahdi. So these are only 74 books of Shia scholars, not all of them. We have here 74, but there are more. Just from Mu'jam Ahadith al-Imam Mahdi. 74 books of the Shia scholars who were compiled in the first 5 centuries only. So when something is so much reported and documented with all the chains of narrators by some of the scholars, that the Shia history, the Shia heritage is very much in debt to them, how can someone say this idea is something which later was introduced or adopted by community? It's very unfair. Okay. I also would like to share with you, before we continue, another book which is very interesting. I hope you can see this book. Al-Imam al-Mahdi Inda Ahl al-Sunnah. Do you see this book?
No, Sheikh, I think we can still see the previous document that you were sharing.
Okay, so let me stop sharing and start. Can you see this one?
Yes.
Al-Imam al-Mahdi and Ahl al-Sunnah. Okay. So, this book is about Imam Mahdi among Ahl al-Sunnah. The good thing about this book is that Sheikh Faqih Imani has brought the scanned pictures of the Sunni sources, which we will talk about them inshallah. So after introduction, then what we have is, for example, Al-Musannaf للحافظ الكبير أبي بكر عبد الرزاق ibn Hammam al-San'ani from Yemen. He was born in 126 and died in 211. Okay? He has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Actually, he has a chapter, Babul Mahdi. Who is he? He is a Sunni scholar. When was he living? In the 2nd and early 3rd century. We said 126 means in the 2nd century, and died 211. Early 3rd century, he passed away. So it's not that we say something that is not there. This is the picture. It's the scan. So Babul Mahdi, he quotes hadith about Imam Mahdi. Another Musannaf by another person, by Hafiz Abu Bakr Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn Ibrahim ibn Uthman, who lived from 159 to 235. That one passed away 211. This one passed away 235. Imam Mahdi was not yet born. So he has book and he quotes hadith about Imam Mahdi. You have the details of the book, and then you go to the page 196, Kitabul Fitan. Fitan are about things that happen in Akhirul Zaman. So for example, just as example, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يكون في أمتي المهدي إن طال عمره أو قصر عمره. Whether he's going to live long or short, he would rule 7 years or 8 years or 9 years. فَيَمْلَأُهَا قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا كَمَا مُلِئَتْ جُرًا. He would fill the earth with social justice and equity as it will be filled with injustice. A sky is going to provide its rain. Earth is going to bring out its barakat and blessings. And Rasulullah, according to this hadith, says, my ummah will live in his time such a prosperous life that they have never lived. So, and there are other hadiths. In Sunan of Ibn Majah, which is one of the 6 Sahih, then you have hadith about Imam Mahdi. In Sunan Ibn Majah, you see all the details. Bab Khuruj al-Mahdi. So I just go to the table of contents at the end because our time is very limited, to show you just the books that we have here. It's not all the books, but the books that he has scanned. So you see, Al-Musannaf Lis-San'ani died 211. Al-Musannaf Ibn Abi Shaybah died 235. Sunan of Ibn Majah died 270. Sunan Abi Dawood, one of other 6 Sahih, died 275. Sunan of Tirmidhi, another Sahih, 295. Al-Bad'u wa Tarikh lil-Maqdisi, who died after 355. Exact year is not known. Al-Mu'jam al-Kabir lil-Tabarani, who died 388. And other. Mustadrak al-Sahihain, which is very good book, has tried to bring Sahih hadiths that are not mentioned in Sahih Muslim and Bukhari by Hakim al-Nishaburi. Has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Even Ibn Arabi, who is well known for his Irfan al-Nazari, theoretical mysticism, in his Futuhat al-Makkiyah, he talks about Imam Mahdi. And he believes that Mahdi is ma'soom. He may not believe about Isma of other, Imams, but about Imam Mahdi he says he's ma'soom because he's not a Shia. مطالب السؤول لابن طلحة الشافعي, who died 650. This is the date of death of the scholar, not at the date that the book was written. The books are written before, of course, the date of the death of this author. Ibn Jawzi in Tazkiratul Khawas talks about Imam Mahdi. Ibn Abil Hadid in Mukhtasar of Sunan Abi Dawud by Mundhari. Al-Ganji al-Shafi'i has a book dedicated, we will talk about this book, Al-Bayan fi Akhbar Sahib al-Zaman. Some of these books have discussion about Imam Mahdi, some are dedicated to the topic of Al-Mahdi. So this one is dedicated. So you see, for example, Al-Fusul al-Muhimma ibn Sabbagh al-Maliki. This is also very famous for discussion about Imam Mahdi. Al-Haytami in As-Sawa'iq al-Muhraqa, in Al-Fatawa al-Haditha, Al-Qawl al-Mukhtasar. Al-Muttaqi al-Hindi in Kanz al-Ummal, very famous, very respected book, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. So I just let you read, I'll have an idea because it takes time if we go one by one. In recent decades, number 58, نظرة في أحاديث المهدي by Sheikh al-Azhar, Muhammad al-Khudr, who died in 1377. Ibn al-Saddiq al-Maghribi has two books. One is Ibraz al-Wahm al-Maknoon, the other is Al-Mahdi al-Muntazar, has hadith about Imam Mahdi. Subhi, Ahmad Mahmud Subhi, Nazariyat al-Imama, talks about Imam Mahdi. Sa'id Ayyub, Aqidat al-Masih, talks about Imam Mahdi. So you see how much this idea is highly regarded by Sunni and Shia, that they have either compiled books on him, on Imam Mahdi, or at least in their books they have addressed this. I will share with you also another thing, and then inshallah we will start our discussion about the content. Here what you see is bibliography of Mu'jam Ahadith al-Imam al-Mahdi, and here you find books by Sunni and Shia that by the research team under Sheikh Qurani have been used. And you find here all these books on Imam Mahdi, or they have part of them, section of them on Imam Mahdi. You see all these books. So if I just quickly go to the end, you would see (671) Sunni and Shia books that have hadith of Imam Mahdi, which are just used by the team which compiled Mu'jam Ahadith al-Imam al-Mahdi. They don't claim that they have, found all the books. 671. Okay. So we are dealing with a topic on which there is great scholarship. And inshallah, after maybe a little break, we can start dealing with the content of, at least some of the content of this hadith in a general way. I want to give you a framework. As I said, detailed discussions will come under relevant topics in future. So maybe we can have a little break and then start the next part, inshallah, after the break. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Sister Zamina, how much we would have break?
I think, Sheikh, 10 minutes?
Yes.
If we restart at 4 p.m., is that okay?
4 p.m. inshallah, sure. UK time, 4 p.m. inshallah.
Yes, UK time.
Inshallah.